Greetings, you are about to access SCP files that are forbidden to the general public. Should you be able to pass the clearance, you should give some thought to who you really are deep down under your normal world persona. Warning: any non-authorized personnel accessing this file will be immediately terminated through Berryman Langford Memetic Kill Agent. Scrolling down without proper memetic inoculation will result in immediate cardiac arrest followed by death. You have been warned. Memetic Kill Agent activated. Continued life signs confirmed. Removing safety interlocks. Welcome, authorized personnel. Please select your desired file. SCP-092, the best of the fifth dimension. Item number, SCP-092. Object class, safe. Special containment procedures. The 3,125 instances of SCP-092 are to be held in individual cases suitable for containing non-anomalous audio compact discs, CDS, and stored in standard inanimate object lockers at Site-37. Each instance is to be individually numbered with permanent marker. Testing of instances of SCP-092 is to be done in soundproof rooms. Only one instance of SCP-092 may be examined at a time. Only D-Class personnel are to listen to previously unexamined instances of SCP-092. Research proposals which involve non-D-Class personnel listening to instances of SCP-092 require written approval from Site Command. The cadaver of SCP-092-B is not currently considered anomalous except by association, and is preserved in the morgue freezer at Site-19. Description: SCP-092 is a set of 3,125 audio CDS, each labeled the absolute best of the fifth dimension, and marked with the names of the 31 performers who have at various times been part of the American singing group The Fifth Dimension. Each instance of SCP-092, when played in a standard CD player, will produce a distinct anomalous effect upon all individuals within hearing range. The anomalous phenomenon will last 74 minutes, the duration of a standard audio CD, during which time listeners will be unable to leave hearing range, or to shut off the CD player or otherwise interrupt its function. As well, when the anomalous phenomenon finishes, all surviving listeners will engage in synchronized vocalization of the phrase "Wow, that was real cool." Synchronized vocalization has been observed in non-Anglophones, preverbal infants, unconscious individuals, paralyzed individuals, and individuals physically incapable of speech due to laryngeal, lingual, and / or buccal damage. The anomalous properties of each instance of SCP-092 are thematically and conceptually linked to the number 5, dimensions, and / or the members of the fifth dimension. As of, redacted, 871 instances of SCP-092 have been assessed and their anomalous properties formally described. See document 092W83 for a full list, or below for a representative sample. For more information, see document 092W83. Instance, SCP-092-028. Anomalous property: listeners experience quintuple vision for all moving objects. Instance, SCP-092-041. Anomalous property: listeners' bodies exude pentagonal crystals of elemental boron, chemical element #5. Crystals cease materializing upon conclusion of CD, but do not dematerialize. Instance, SCP-092-042. Anomalous property: listeners' bodies exude pentagonal ingots of elemental manganese, chemical element #25, or 5-2. Ingots cease materializing upon conclusion of CD, but do not dematerialize. listeners succumb to acute manganese poisoning within 24 hours. Instance, SCP-092-043. Anomalous property, listeners' bodies exude pentagonal nodules of elemental cesium, chemical element #55. All listeners killed by cesium burns within 8 minutes. Instance, SCP-092-079. Anomalous property, listeners become physiologically 5 years old. Instance, SCP-092-080. Anomalous property, listeners become physiologically 5 months old. Instance, SCP-092-081. Anomalous property, listeners become physiologically 5 weeks old. Instance, SCP-092-082. Anomalous property, listeners become physiologically 5 days old. Instance, SCP-092-087. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously become 5 months pregnant. Pregnancies spontaneously miscarry upon conclusion of CD. In initial tests, all male listeners succumb to massive internal hemorrhaging within 10 minutes, as do 3 female listeners. Surviving female listeners succumb to organ damage within 4 days. Post-mortem genetic analysis shows that all fetuses were identical, and are not related to the listeners. Instance, SCP-092-126. Anomalous property, listeners experience unbearably painful facial spasms characterized by constant chewing and biting motions, symptoms of trigeminal neuralgia, caused by inflammation of the fifth cranial nerve. During initial test, all listeners batter themselves into unconsciousness against walls of testing chamber in attempts to escape the pain. Instance, SCP-092-175. Anomalous property, listeners' bodies are pentasected radially, producing 5 disconnected segments which remain alive and mobile. Instance, SCP-092-176. Anomalous property, listeners' bodies are pentasected laterally, producing 5 disconnected segments which remain alive and mobile. Instance, SCP-092-177. Anomalous property, listeners' bodies are pentasected longitudinally, producing 5 disconnected segments which remain alive and mobile. Instance, SCP-092-178. Anomalous property, listeners' bodies are pentasected axially, producing 5 disconnected segments which remain alive and mobile. Instance, SCP-092-200. Anomalous property, listeners are teleported to a site on the surface of Himalaya, 5th most massive moon of Jupiter, 5th planet from the Sun. Listeners are returned upon conclusion of CD, but succumb to the combined effects of hypothermia, hypoxia, and radiation poisoning within 3 hours. 1. See footnotes. Instance, SCP-092-256. Anomalous property, listeners are converted into 2-dimensional forms. Instance, SCP-092-271. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously lose 5 teeth each. Teeth do not regrow after conclusion of CD. Instance, SCP-092-272. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously lose all but 5 teeth each. Teeth do not regrow after conclusion of CD. Instance, SCP-092-273. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously lose 5 fingernails each. Fingernails do not regrow after conclusion of CD. Instance, SCP-092-274. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously lose 5 toenails each. Toenails do not regrow after conclusion of CD. Instance, SCP-092-278. Anomalous property, listeners spontaneously grow 3 extra eyes each, for a total of 5. 2. See footnotes. Extra eyes do not dematerialize upon conclusion of CD. Eyes are functional, and of the same color as listener's original eyes. Instance, SCP-092-279. Anomalous property, listeners experience topological deformation such that their height becomes the circumference of their waist, and vice versa, deformation reverts at conclusion of CD. This appears to be an exchange between listener's dimension of height and dimension of width. Instance, SCP-092-285. Anomalous property, listeners sneeze 5 times per minute for the duration of the CD. Instance, SCP-092-286. Anomalous property, listeners belch 5 times per minute for the duration of the CD. Instance, SCP-092-287. Anomalous property, listeners hiccup 5 times per minute for the duration of the CD. Instance, SCP-092-288. Anomalous property, listeners cough 5 times per minute for the duration of the CD. Instance, SCP-092-315. Anomalous property, listeners find themselves within the 2010 Lars von Trier film Dimension. 3. See footnotes, where they are able to interact with the setting but not affect the actions of the characters. Since Dimension is only 27 minutes in duration, the events within the film repeat 2.74 times. Instance, SCP-092-316. Anomalous property, listeners find themselves within the 1993 EastEnders / Doctor Who crossover Dimensions in Time, where they are able to interact with the setting but not affect the actions of the characters. Since the 2 parts of Dimensions in Time are only 13 minutes in total duration, the events within the episodes repeat 5.69 times. Instance, SCP-092-317. Anomalous property, listeners find themselves within the 1963 Italian film Amore in Quattro Dimensioni, where they are able to interact with the setting but not affect the actions of the characters. Instance, SCP-092-397. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of Alan Shepard, the 5th man to walk on the moon. Instance, SCP-092-399. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of James Monroe, the 5th President of the United States. Instance, SCP-092-400. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of Mackenzie Bowell, the 5th Prime Minister of Canada. Instance, SCP-092-401. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of Edward Seager, the 5th Prime Minister of Jamaica. Instance, SCP-092-402. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of Sharan Singh, the 5th Prime Minister of India. Instance, SCP-092-403. Anomalous property, listeners experience random moments in the life of Helen Hayes, the 5th winner of the Academy Award for Best Actress. Instance, SCP-092-466. Anomalous property, listeners are physically transformed into members of the original lineup of the 5th Dimension, as they were at the time of the group's establishment in 1966. Instance, SCP-092-467. Anomalous property, listeners are physically transformed into members of the original lineup of the 5th Dimension, as they were at the time of the original group's dissolution in 1975. Instance, SCP-092-468. Anomalous property, listeners are physically transformed into members of the original lineup of the fifth dimension, as they were at the time of the original group's reunion in 1990. Instance, SCP-092-469. Anomalous property, listeners are physically transformed into members of the original lineup of the fifth dimension, as they are today. Listeners who transform into Ron Tonson, 1933–2001, resume their original forms after conclusion of CD, but do not resurrect. When an instance of SCP-092 is inserted into the CD drive of a personal computer, its files can be accessed without triggering the anomalous effects. Examination of the files indicates that each CD has different content. All content is audio material by or pertaining to the fifth dimension and its individual members. In addition to all known commercially released songs, files contain live performances, practice sessions, auditions, media interviews, and personal conversations. Acquisition log. On the 5th of May, redacted, an unidentified man, henceforth SCP-092-B, carrying 2 suitcases approached front gate guards at Site 19, and stated that he wished to surrender himself and his anomalous creations into Foundation custody. The contents of his suitcases were confiscated, and classed as SCP-092. SCP-092-B was transferred to Site 37 for interrogation. During interrogation, SCP-092-B revealed the thematic connections, 5 dimensions, and the 5th dimension, between all instances of SCP-092, and then committed suicide. Access requires Level 4 security clearance or higher. Restricted access. Transcript of statement made by SCP-092-B upon arrival at Site 19. God, sir, this is private property, you can't. SCP-092-B, this is a secret Foundation site, right? God, you can't come in here, sir, SCP-092-B, you're the SCP Foundation, and I'm a failure. God, what was that, sir? SCP-092-B, you're the SCP Foundation, and I'm a failure. I think I'm clever, but I'm not. I'm a stupid boring Necultani hack who thinks that money and cheap puns can take the place of talent and inspiration. I'm tasteless. I'm dull. I'm incompetent, I have no sense of style, and the only reason I'm not an art criminal is that nothing I've ever made is even close to being art. You can secure me, and you can contain me, but no one can protect me. Please take me and my anomalous garbage into custody. At this point, guards summoned backup. SCP-092-B repeated this statement verbatim until he was taken into custody. Excerpt from transcript of SCP-092-B Interrogation Session Number 2. Interviewer: yes, we understand about 5NES, thank you, that's been most helpful, but we were also wondering what you could tell us about how you made these. SCP-092-B, I just wanted to be cool, you know. I really did. I thought, well, I had my inheritance, and my collection, and there was the estate, and the abandoned museum, and so much of the stuff went together, and it wasn't that tough, and, look, my ideas were better than yours. They were. I know they were. No. They're not. Nobody's impressed by stupid facile wordplay. It's not even good wordplay, it's kindergarten-level paranomasia. Oh look, 5 dimensions, what other things can you think of that come in 5s? I'm worthless. I'm worthless. Interviewer: better than my ideas. SCP-092-B, there's no deeper meaning to what I did, it's all just superficial Potemkin village crap pumping imitation shit into the river of human achievement. It's Stein's fucking Oakland, and I don't even fucking understand those fucking illusions. I'm an uninspired wannabe, I'm boring, I'm a useless hack with no fucking imagination. I've wasted and ruined miracles, I've squandered so much raw material that better people could have done so much with. I'm not cool. I never will be. I'm really sorry about the mess. These aren't my arms. At this point, SCP-092-B seized his own head with both hands and ripped it off his neck, killing himself instantly. Footnotes: 1. Requests have been made to use SCP-092-200 to send exploration teams equipped with environment suits to Himalaya. Approval is pending. 2. D-092-7714, who had lost an eye in a fight prior to entering Foundation custody, grew 4 extra eyes when listening to SCP-092-278. 3. Although SCP-092 was taken into Foundation custody in redacted, Von Trier began production on Dimension in the 1980s, with the intention of continuing for 30 years.